Hello and welcome to Microsoft Hates Greg. My name is Greg Deckler, and today this is actually part of the Power BI Alternative series. Although we're going to be taking a step back in this video and asking ourselves, like, what does a real alternative to Power BI look like? I mean, and we have to start by asking ourselves, well, what is it about Power BI? What is Power BI specifically? And I know people are out there, well, it's a self-visualization tool, blah blah. No, but what are the valuable bits and parts of Power BI, right? What makes it tick? What makes it different than what does it do better or worse than all the other products that we've kind of reviewed thus far? Like we found a lot of them that just don't measure up, right? We've also found a few like Astrato and Metabase that are look interesting and look like we want to take a deeper look at them. But there's a lot of tools that just they don't measure up. And so we have to ask ourselves, as I've been going through this, I've been asking myself, what is it about Power BI that, what are the valuable parts of it in that? So I think I've got somewhat of an answer. And I don't know if we're going to be using Power BI desktop today, but this is actually what you're seeing here is from chapter 6 of DAX for Humans. It's kind of the no calculate Bible that I'm writing over on Patreon. This is just I've got the report up here for this. But what we're really going to be talking about mostly is this right here. Let me save it. What is Power BI? And I don't have as many tabs open in Notepad versus in my web browsers. All right, so here's kind of how I break down Power BI, and we're going to be talking through a number of these as we go through this. But I break it down. Okay, you have visuals, and I would say you have to distinguish them as they're interactive or modern, right? To kind of separate them from things like the older technologies like paginated reports and things like that. Right. Then you have a powerful formula language in DAX, right? Another thing that I think is important as I've been going through these alternatives, some of them don't seem to don't have any kind of concept of a local data model. It's reaching back out to the data and pulling it in every single time, which makes it incredibly slow. Even slower than direct query in a lot of cases. Then you have Power Query, right? This is our data transformation engine where we can ingest information, do a lot of complex transformations on it. Then we have sharing in the service, right? That's is actually what you pay for, is the ability to share the reports, right? Which then also gives you self-service. And I think the other thing about Power BI, it has a self-service component. It serves the needs of like the individual as well as you can scale it out to an enterprise. So these are the things that I kind of think are the valuable bits, or if I was to break Power BI down, this is what I would this is how I break it down. Now, the interesting thing to me in this is that number one, the visuals are meh at best, right? I mean, compared to Tableau and a lot of other products that I've seen out there, even some of the bad open source stuff like Superset, Apache Superset. I mean, their mapping capabilities like look pretty much off the charts compared to where Power BI has been throughout the majority of its history, its decade-long history now, right? Except with the exception of Azure Maps, are kind of start to bring it on par with some of it. The interesting thing to me though is that like DAX, if you listen to the Power BI experts that are out there, right? If you start using complex DAX beyond like just simple aggregations, they're gonna be like wagging their fingers at you, like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be, having a star schema and your data model is simple and blah blah in DAX. You should never do anything complex in DAX, right? So I mean, according to the Power BI experts, like the Power BI pros that are out there, you shouldn't even be using the power of DAX. You shouldn't ever need anything more than a sum or an average or a max or a min, right? According to these people that are supposed to be in the know, right? That's just their opinions on things. Um, and the same is true, really, for Power Query, number 4 on the list, right? These same people, they'll wag their finger at you and like, you should not be doing complex transformations in Power Query. We have Roche's maxim and blah, blah. And you should push those back up. So according to these experts in the community, like these are worthless pieces of Power BI, right? DAX and Power Query are worthless to a large degree because you should never be using even a smidgen of the power that they hold. Now, whether or not these people should be believed or not, or whether you take their words as as the God's honest truth or whatever, that's up to you. But I point it out because it's interesting to me that like two of the things that I identify as being two of the valuable pieces of Power BI, there's a large segment of the community that says those things are worthless, right? That's what their opinion is. That those should be taken off the list because you shouldn't be using them. So I just, I call that out. The other one I think is the local data model. I think to me actually is really central to Power BI's success. As I've been going through a lot of these other modeling tools and reporting tools, if I was to pick anything on this list, right, that's valuable, it's the local data model. It's the ability to have this data come into an analysis services database, right, and be very fast, right? This tabular data model, this vertipack engine, compressed up, whatever it is, in memory, right? It makes it blazingly fast. And the only thing that I found really to compete with it as far as speed and that sort of stuff was maybe a Strato, maybe Metabase and that sort of thing. But I think, a lot of this is where a lot of the other tools have fallen down, in my opinion, with Apache Supersets and a few other ones like that, where it's dog slow. And it's because it doesn't seem to have any concept of a local data model to make it fast. So I think if I was to pick anything on the list, I would pick local data model as number one in terms of why Power BI is successful or why people like it and that sort of thing. Then the other things that's interesting is number 5 on the list, like I said, in self-service enterprise. Those are the things you pay for. That's what you pay your, now $14 a month, right, for Power BI Pro license. That is what you pay for. So anyway, it's interesting to me again that I think I don't think the local data model aspect of it has gotten enough attention as to why Power BI is successful. Like I think people, point to visuals and point to DAX and point to Power Query, when I don't think, any of those are really the real strength of Power BI, right? You get into people like me that build complex DAX stuff, um, mostly just to see if it can be done. But there are people out there that are doing this stuff, and then the reason I write a lot of the crazy DAX I do comes directly from people posting in the forums, right? And Power Query is super powerful as well. And again, it really boils down to how much are you going to believe these Power BI so-called experts out there that will tell you that writing, complex DAX and writing complex Power Query is a stupid thing to do, right? They're, it's not enterprise and blah, 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 right? I mean, but that is their opinion of it, that those aspects of Power BI are worthless to a large degree, right? And we know the visuals are, they've just never been a strong suit. So that's why I go back to the local data models being kind of central, in my opinion, as to why Power BI has succeeded. The other thing, in terms of what you're paying for, like the first 4 things on those lists, you basically are free, right? You can, with Power BI Desktop being free, you can do all those things without paying a dime. Where you start to pay is when you get into 5 and 6, right? When you need to have the web service to be able to share stuff out. The thing that comes to my mind, honestly, when I think about that is how far away are we from me being able to load up ChatGPT and say, write me a web service where I can upload a Power BI desktop file and you can display the visuals, right? Like I know, maybe people are like, oh, we're nowhere close to that. We may be closer to that than you think, right? I mean, Microsoft has already published out the TMDL models and, all of these other uh, file formats that kind of, break out this PBIX file, which is always a zip file to begin with. So if, if a chat GPT or an AI is smart enough to reverse engineer that stuff, right? Then why couldn't it write a web service where I like, hey, I'll just have it write a web service for me that I can display Power BI reports in and share them. And then I don't have to pay Microsoft $14 a month, right? I can just, run it off of a local server or run it up, I can spin up, an $80 a month server and everybody in my organization can use it, for paying that $80, right? How far away are we really from being able to do that, where all of these software developers, right, their entire business model just kind of goes kerplunk because this whole software as a service concept. Well, if you're going to lock me in as a vendor, and charge me, and I don't get perpetual licenses anymore, and you're just going to keep charging me endlessly forever for this software, maybe it does make more sense in a world where, AI is prevalent. It makes things easy. It does make a lot of sense for me to just spin up, have AI write my own service, and I don't have to pay your tax on my software, right? And I think, and people maybe think I'm crazy, but if you see some of the stuff Sam McKay has been we've been chatting back and forth about Lovable, which is this basically it's a AI assisted, front end application that you can write, basically a web service. It's amazing what you can do with it. So I mean, you can basically spend 45 minutes or so, and you can have a complete front end web application that you can then wire up to do whatever you want it to do. So these tools are coming on along at a incredibly fast pace. So it's just these things are the things that make me wonder just how long this business model from Microsoft is really going to continue on. Um, and the interesting that right the comeuppance, if you will, or the irony of it is that that these tools would basically spell an end to their business model, and it's the tools they themselves have been promoting and investing in, which will ultimately be their undoing potentially. So interesting things to think about. These are the things that keep my mind going. But anyway, that's all I had for this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.